It's March Mania. It's Sports Interaction, NHL, NBA, March Madness, MLB, and so much more. We got crazy odds and the best live in play. Download the app right now in Ontario. Use the QR code at the bottom right of the screen or head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN to get started. 19 plus, please play responsibly. As a race fan, you like to see great stories and follow them as they happen. Like, you know, when with Daniel Ricciardo during silly season last year and the McLaren rumors and all that stuff, whatever was published, whatever was posted, I was eating that up. But sometimes then afterwards you're like, I would really like to see the Drive to Survive take on this, which is why we're doing the reaction episode. The other major thing that I think everybody wanted to see Drive to Survive cover, and they did, and they covered it quite well, was the Red Bull overspend. And it starts with the different garages, McLaren, Ferrari, talking about that something doesn't seem right at Red Bull. And there is a little mention for Aston Martin too, because they were slightly over as well on a technicality, I believe. But Red Bull was significantly over. And what's been interesting, and what was interesting at the time and interesting in Drive to Survive, is the way that Christian, who is a PR machine, comes out and spins it. So let's start with the actual overspend, which turned out to be, Christian said it was $400,000. From what I read, it was $7 million.
So he's right on some parts of that. I mean, what they don't actually mention is like Red Bull actually missed filing
a tax return or something?
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where they would have got like a refund or something that would have limited the amount of money.
Yeah.
But like him even just trying to justify, it's $400,000 on catering. It was for the employees. That's like tax evasion.
Well, I like Zach saying, it's not pickles on sandwiches, guys.
No, you overspend somewhere and then you put it into the catering budget so it doesn't look so bad. Like that's
I think part of the team is like some of
the rules.
Part of the problem, I think Jesse was like some of the teams sort of practiced the budget cap scenario like a year before the cost cap kind of really came into play, and they got a better understanding of like how they could spend the money, where they could spend the money, what could they write off, what couldn't they, what qualifies as what, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because from my understanding, there's a separate fund for like off-track marketing, and then you have your funds for your car builds, and then there isn't really anything for drivers or team principals yet. Not to say that it may change,
right?
Just might. But Red Bull, from my understanding, wasn't one of the teams that actually practiced the. Yeah.
So this is their first run through, and
they got
a couple errors, and
now one of the things that I remember this being at the time, and then they did actually feature this answer in the press conferences that they feature in Drive to Survive, which is, Max and Sergio on stage and people yelling cheater at them.
Oh yeah,
and
U.S. Grand Prix.
Yes, yeah. And it's funny because Red Bull is a very popular team in the United States, so for that to be the case, people don't like cheaters. And I think the Christian's response to it on Drive to Survive was, well, if you define cheating in the dictionary definition of it, it's cheating is doing something wrong in like outside of the rules, willingly, knowingly trying to circumvent the rules for a competitive advantage. And then he says in the actual press conference, and I remember this at the time and went, Christian.
Yeah.
So he said, and I know you know what I'm talking about here, and he said, I think we need to take into account the deterioration of people's mental health. I'm paraphrasing.
Of our drivers.
Talking about the mental health of the driver. And I think it's pretty rich for the offending team's principal to invoke mental health, which is a very real thing, on something like that.
Yeah, I was in the room for that.
You were there?
No way!
Tell me about what was it? Didn't seem like there was enough reaction to that.
No, because you can't really. Because the thing is with so when you go into the press conferences, like you turn your phone off and all that kind of stuff, or you use your phone as a recording device so you can pick up the audio, so you can go and write your stories with it. Because there's a section in there for print media. And you kind of want it, you want that so you can go and do your stories and stuff. So there is a certain level of etiquette you kind of have to hold yourself to when you go into these press conferences for sure. Cameras are always sort of rolling. And so you kind of have to make sure you're on your, like as a journalist or whatever, you're being respectful of the drivers, team principals, team personnel's time and what you're asking them and how you're asking them. At least that's the way I kind of look at it, because some journalists really get in there with some questions, man.
The British press are crazy.
They don't care.
Crazy. The German press too. Crazy.
But I always wonder, like, how would that fly with like North American sports? You know what I mean? Like,
we're a little bit more. We sidestep things. We allude to things, but we never come out and bluntly say it.
yeah, because they've come out and like bluntly say
Yeah.
some of them like really get in there.
But
Anyways, yeah, during that time, it was kind of just like I was like, wait, what?
You were taken aback when you heard it.
kinda,
Yeah.
huh?
And,
like,
and
all right, well,
do you think that people kind of raised their eyebrows? Was that Christian spin?
I mean, if that's what he believes, right, then you can't really second guess it, because that's what he's telling you, and so you have to take him at what he's telling you. That's just the way it works, right? I mean,
I thought it was interesting that the scene before that, he's seen talking to his PR guy, and he's like, I want to be last into the room, and he walks in. So I was like, okay, how choreographed was this mental health answer? Did he go over it with somebody? Tim's not saying anything.
yeah, I could like tell you where I was doing a separate interview with another driver, and I looked at my watch and I'm like, oh, team principal meeting's like going on right now. So it wrapped up my interview or whatever, and I'm like, okay, well, I gotta run. So I was literally like running down the paddock, like, oh, I gotta get to this thing. And so I was there right as it was starting.
Okay.
So like everyone was there. It was good to go. So yeah, I missed all of, I guess, whatever that part of Drive to Survive was showing. I missed all of it, so I can't comment on it. But like I got in there right when everybody started talking. And like as soon as you get in the room, you go zip, like you got to be so silent because it's like a really quiet atmosphere. Everybody's laid back, they've got their microphones on, and like they get the question, you got to get the answer. You got to be really quiet in the room.
And now, then, Jesse, you mentioned this off the air, but then of course, everybody, the Toto and Mattia are talking, we see that. But Zach Brown.
So like, really good. We're talking about you.
Yeah. We're plotting. And he's like, oh, okay, great, thanks. But then Zach Brown, who I actually really respected this, came out and said cheating is cheating. It doesn't matter whether you meant to or not. And he put it out in a letter and was willing to put his name and the brand behind it. How much power do you think that held? And Christian said, well, I can't believe I'm being attacked. But
I think that got him in some hot water. Because,
Zach Brown?
Yeah, I think it did. I don't think Christian or Red Bull as a brand took that very kindly to what Zach had written and put out.
Was any of it wrong?
Like factually, I think if I remember correctly, like we're going back to there's so much stuff that I'm trying to like rattle through my brain.
But there wouldn't have been anything
my notes at home, of course. But
it wasn't like outstanding wrong.
But accusing somebody of being a cheater, I think, is something that's.
But don't the facts lay that bare?
I would say, yeah. But like I think.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jen. No, my thing was, it was just like, where was any of the money spent on the car, and if so, like how much of the overspend was spent? That's what I would like to know.
But for a season in 2021, because this is when they went over the cap, that ends seconds apart, you win the championship on the last lap, and that little advantage of them winning it in such a tight window, is it, if you say you went over this much, if all the other teams had that advantage, who knows how the championship plays out? And I think a lot of teams took that personally because of how close it was and how they wouldn't admit to any wrongdoing at all. And then Zach Brown comes out and calls them a cheater. That I just don't think people are very happy with Red Bull.
I mean, when you're at the top, right? No one's ever happy with you.
No.
Sure.
No.
That's usually the way it goes.
You get the sense Christian relishes that. He loves the bullseye.
Yeah, I always found like Christian's like he mixes it up with everybody, right?
Oh yeah.
And he gets everyone going.
Oh, yeah.
But like, wouldn't you want that on your team? You know what I mean? It's kind of like with hockey, right? You have your enforcer, but then you also have like your person who ruffles everyone's feathers, gets everyone off their game and all that kind of stuff. And I always sometimes look at Christian kind of like that a bit, but like you kind of need it like in Formula One nowadays.
He's great at taking the focus off the drivers and putting it on himself.
Yes, which was it's
brilliant.
Huge. That's
brilliant.
Huge.
And so I guess then people are asking, or we're asking a lot. And I had talked to you last summer about it because I'm like, okay, what they ended up getting was a fine and like a wind tunnel reduction.
Yeah.
And how consequential is that really?
I think like some of the teams will say, oh, it's a slap on a wrist and whatever. But like at the end of the day, they're already getting a reduced amount of wind tunnel testing time. So for those who don't know, for this new set of regulation, part of it is wind tunnel testing time. I mean, back in the day, we had teams running wind tunnels and CFD 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's no joke. And now, since they put a cap on all of it, saying like, okay, the team that finishes 10th, they get like whatever it is, like 110 or 115. It's
like a reverse order of like draft.
Yes,
when you're doing
they
it.
get a ton of time in the wind tunnel. They get maximum time. Where the winner, you guys get the least amount of time. And so I think it's around 70% the winner gets. And to have a reduction in that is huge. That goes from saying you can run your car in the wind tunnel 4 days a week for 12 hours every day to now saying to them, hey, you can only do that 3 days a week at 8 hours, right? And it's kind of like that's a big. And I'm just putting out random numbers.
Yeah,
like those aren't the real numbers. I don't know what they are, but that's just saying like that's a huge cut in your performance. And so we've seen Red Bull coming into 2023 here, they absolutely took it to everybody in round one. Well, what happens to that car by the time we get to like round 9?
Well, when Williams is at 120% of the allotted time because they can be, right?
Sure, but like last. It's kind of like, well, what about like Mercedes or Aston Martin?
Mm-hmm.
They have quite a bit of wind tunnel CFD design, and obviously Mercedes getting off on the wrong foot. They've got
but Aston Martin not.
But Aston Martin, they don't, and they're already really competitive. So what happens when there's 60, whatever it is, there's 65, 66% wind tunnel time for Red Bull. Aston Martin's got whatever it is, 85, 90, whatever. They've got more. What happens? That's what I want to know. I want to know how big of an impact this is going to have on their season, either midway, or how much of an impact is this going to have on 2024? Because it is going to affect them at some point. It just will. So will the cost cap. Both of those things are going to get hit with. So it's kind of like which one is going to come first.
One thing that really upset me, as they always do, is the FIA not having a rule in place for what happens when. You put in this cap. If a team overspends it, why is there not just a rule written down? If you go above it, you get this punishment.
Well, there was, right? There is that. There's kind of like a list. It's kind of like, here's the list if you go to here, here's the list if you go to here, and this is what's going to happen if you go to here. We're going to remove your championship from the previous season. We'll dock you points from that season. Or we'll give you a fine. We'll affect how much time you get in the wind tunnel. Mm-hmm. And then we'll do CFD on top of all of that. So, I mean, there are certain things that they can like go to and really hurt you. I think for Red Bull, I know there are some people that wanted a bit more. I think for me, when I look at the penalty that they got, I think the financial penalty should have been a little bit higher. I agree with the wind tunnel penalty, though. That actually is it's going to play a factor at some point. It's either going to happen this season or they're really going to be affected by it next season. At some point, though, that penalty is going to hit them. And so for the FIA, and in my opinion, needed to have a very strong stance in what they were going to do in that moment. I didn't see anything totally wrong with it. I mean, obviously the fans are going to be
I didn't think it took weeks for them to make that decision. Red Bull got a say in. I remember those weeks when we were just waiting to see what's going to happen. Are they going to take away the championship? And there was just no clear directive for the fans to be like, okay, Red Bull did this, they get this suspension.
Yeah, it took a while for that to come out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was cool in Drive to Survive. You actually got to see Christian Horner go into that meeting with Mohammed Ben Sulayem and actually had that meeting. And I was just like, are they gonna mic this up? That's gonna be awesome.
Yes. Okay, well, it was one of the stories last year. And again, you can watch Nailing the Apex or listen to Nailing the Apex with Tim Hauraney 3 times weekly, usually before the race, like Thursday, Friday, always a recap Sunday night, Monday, and of course a midweek episode all season long. And the season is long. So we got lots of Tim coming up this year on SDPN.